right, and welcome to today's episode of Future Stack, where in this episode, we will unpack the major tech events that define 2024 and look ahead at what's coming in 2025. Now, we'll explore how these developments are reshaping industries and impacting businesses worldwide. Now, I'm joined today by two visionary leaders in technology. First, we have Paul Lewis, the Chief Technology Officer over at Pythian, and just named one of the top 15 CTOs worldwide. That's right, we have him here today. Paul has over 30 years of experience in technology strategy and innovation and has been instrumental in guiding organizations through their digital transformation journeys. Now, my second guest is Ernest Solomon, a transformative leader and extensive expertise as a CIO, a CTO, and a CISO. And he's currently a field CTO over at Pythian and my partner in crime. Ernest has a remarkable track record of driving digital innovation, cybersecurity enhancements, and strategic IT transformations for global organizations. Now, together, Paul and Ernest bring decades of experience of invaluable insights into the intersection of technology, strategy, and business. Now, let's dive into what 2024 has taught us and what's next in 2025. Paul, Ernest, welcome to the program.
Hello, hello. Good to be here.
Thanks, Seth. Good to be here.
Hey, it's great to have you here. So 2024, there were some things that happened in the tech world, just some little things we call AI, we call data, we call cloud, fun stuff like that.
Is this the first time we've been on program together?
I think it is. Now, I've had Ernest on by himself, but I've had trouble tracking you down a little bit, and you've had me a little bit busy on the road. One of the things that was lacking in the intro, of course, was as CTO at Pythian, you're also my boss. So I guess we have to be nice.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Expect the easy questions. Ernest, I will pass every question to Ernest that I don't know.
There you go.
Smart
move. And if he doesn't know it, he's fired. So good.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all good.
It's all good.
Performance season, right? So
let's turn this into a performance review, and I'll just interview both of you, and you can't ask me any questions. So, Paul, let's start with you, though, as CTO over at Pythian. How have you and others that you're interacting with, how are they dealing with the complexities? And I'm going to call this multi-cloud, because we had this whole, hey, we have our own data centers, then it was cloud first for everything. And I think we're sort of settling into this multi-cloud space. First of all, what does multi-cloud mean to you, and how are companies dealing with it?
Multi-cloud is a weird turn of phrase, mostly because it's usually not by intention. It's mostly by happenstance, right? It's usually I'm subscribing to a bunch of services. Some of those services run in hyperscaler A versus hyperscaler B. I might consume services from hyperscaler C because they're excellent at data analytics, right? So I'm not sure I came out of the gate choosing to be a multi-cloud environment. In fact, if anything, I chose to be and have a diversified platform, right? Where I have services available to me in one-to-many clouds. I have services available to me in my own data center. I have services available to me and managed by third parties that are in colos. And I have services available to me at the edge, right? So I'm going to have a bunch of workloads. Those are distributed across all of those environments. And while some of them might be multi-cloud, I think the people who chose a purposeful multi-cloud are now choosing a purposeful single cloud. Because I really think that where the goal was not putting all my eggs in a single basket, they realized that that has detrimental effects, right? It has detrimental pricing, it has detrimental integration, it has detrimental, I'm not as important to vendor A that I am to multiple vendors, right? So I think that's what's happening.
Yeah. And then, so if we take also, we use the term multi-cloud, meaning more than one public cloud, but let's talk hybrid cloud, where we're now on-prem and some public cloud stuff as well. How are you seeing companies deal with that? Or is it, and the phrase I used to use was, is it their strategy or is it their situation?
I think everybody likes automation, right? I think everybody likes the ability to consume via capital and or subscription and or consumption, right? I think those are viable sort of buying patterns. I think depending on the alignment to the line of business is how I'm going to consume or what's more important to consume. I think optionality becomes important, and that optionality says, I have a variety of workload needs and therefore I have to consume it from a variety of places. Therefore that diversification exists. And yes, some of that optionality, includes sort of automation on premise within my control, within my hug, right? That I have the same kind of consumption pattern I do in the cloud, but I still have regulatory and contractual and other legislative boundaries that require me to hug it, right? So you are going to have a hybrid environment where I have some edge, I have some traditional data center, I have some private cloud data center, I have some multi-cloud, public cloud offerings, all as sort of one unit, one variety pack of data and infrastructure.
And Ernest, before we joined here at Pythian in September, you were fresh out of being a CIO. What industry were you in? And then what did the multi-cloud / hybrid cloud world look like to you?
Well, me and Paul were on a roundtable together, and what we've heard, we heard cloud first, we heard hybrid cloud, we heard multi-cloud, we've heard all these different acronyms, then we also heard cloud only as well. So, just wanted to add in there, maybe it's not about any one of those, I think, in my mind, and with new technological advancements, with AI being there, maybe it's cloud smart now at this point in time. You'll select the right cloud hyperscaler based on your business requirements, your workloads that you may have. Some may fall into a different bucket, which is much more prominent than the other hyperscaler bucket. So I think it's truly a CIOs and CTOs, basket to fill of hyperscalers, and choice is yours, realistically.
Yeah, I like the phrase cloud smart. That's a good way to think about it in the future, because it leaves room for each organization to define what that means to them and how they can be successful.
Is cloud first a thing? Like, Jeff, is cloud first, you hear that often? Is that still important? Is that a strategy that makes sense?
I think so. And good job turning the tables and asking me questions, by the way. Well done. Takes you off the hot seat. I would say yes, because I think it can be a strategy to say you can have a cloud be your first desired destination for a workload, but maybe not the only destination. Should there be, like you said, regulatory, geographic, performance-based things that would necessitate that workload run somewhere else? Like maybe you're in banking and maybe you want to put as much as possible into your favorite cloud, call it Google. We love Google, but your AS400, it's probably staying in your data center.
iSeries. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And it might be true for a small, medium business as well, or a startup, that it is only that, where multi-cloud is going to be for large FIs and large organizations, which have had enterprise IT for a significant amount of years as well. So something to dwell on.
Well, and it also calls us to probably define, when we say cloud first, it doesn't mean cloud only. It just means that is the first choice, but not the only choice of a place where they can put workloads.
The one thing I hear very frequently now versus I did in the past, there was always this assumption in the past that I would build a workload to be deployed potentially to multiple places, right? Mm-hmm. I want to virtualize, I want to containerize, because I want to be able to pull that back or push that to another cloud environment, which I always thought was hilarious, because practically you're not going to do that, right?
No one's going to move anything, especially based on they made me mad, they charged me too much, or I had an outage. Nobody's moving anywhere.
Yeah, and they make it impossible themselves by deploying into a cloud and then start to consume all of those services, right? They consume their AD, they do integration paths. It becomes a spider web within that cloud. It's like, well, now the cost to move it isn't the container. It's all of the recreation of the integration you just made, right? It's almost impossible, right? So you have to design for a destination, not multiple destinations.
Yeah, I always used to say that that having multiple clouds, let's say you're going to have two clouds, it's not like you're going to say the level of work and expense or whatever is like 1 + 1 is like 1 + 50 because of the retraining, the people expertise, the logistics of managing procurement. I mean, all of the minutia that goes into an application running in another cloud. Hey, another big challenge that continues to plague the world is cybersecurity stuff. Ernest, let's pivot over to you for a second. You've got a CISO background. What are some of the big challenges folks had in 2024, and how are they dealing with it?
Well, 2024 may be the biggest year where the most amount of breaches happen potentially. Right now, we're probably 1 billion plus of stolen records and rising. So the dark web is hot and heavy at this point in time. I would say things such as ransomware, phishing campaigns, humans being the weakest link. I think all those things are going to continue. The targeted attacks are going to continue. I think if you think that you're invincible, you're exceptionally wrong. And I would say is your strategy has to be a very multi-layered, interconnected strategy. And what I mean by that is take your GRC into play, take your assessment into play, look at your own security model or the maturity landscape, where maturity that you have for the organization, and then make a strategy which is fit for use, fit for purpose. You will not be able to turn the dial from 0 to 100 in 6 months, but you will be able to turn the dial from 0 to 10 and make it a successful one for your organization.
Paul, what are you seeing on the cyber side?
Obvious trends, right? So obvious trends are events are going to occur. So as much effort as you put into protection, you have to put in equal amount of efforts into resiliency, right? Mm-hmm. So not just keeping bad actors out, but dealing with an event once it's occurred, so that my outage is measured in minutes and hours, not days and weeks, right? So how do I create enough segregation between my workloads and my sort of internal and external DMZs to support positive but not truly detrimental effect when one of those events occurs. So the resilience effort needs to be there. We also see that the CISO starting reporting into the CEO to handle all security versus sort of just under the CIO handling information security and having a dedicated separate budget. That dedicated separate budget is growing by versus the dedicated separate budget of IT growing in the 4s to 5s, right? Much smaller percentage as an example, because there are more bad actors are better what they're doing, right? So, and the inclusion of AI is just making it worse, right? They're much more difficult to detect, much more difficult to understand and appreciate the correlation and causation, and much more difficult to have an end user appreciate the impact of a phishing, right? Because it looks exactly like the CEO submitting them an email versus you were able to look for cues in an email. Now you have less ability to look for those cues.
And I feel like 2024 is also a year where there was an acknowledgement that really the weak link in a security chain are people like you and I. I mean, it's the people. We're the weak link. Where somebody's going to click on something that they shouldn't have clicked on. They're going to believe an email or a text or a call that they think they trust, and they're going to do a thing that they shouldn't do.
I think another thing, Jeff, what you will see is similar to like the AT&T breach that was there. You may see a breach happen in repetition much more quicker and faster in a shorter time. Because what happens is what Paul mentioned, right? The ability for an organization that's breached, the very first thing is incident response. How do I restore? Then you start to look at proactive, and that proactive is going to come, okay, what do I need to fine tune my strategy? Whether it will take them 2 months, 3 months, maybe 6 months, some of them even longer. So how fast can they move that needle? And during that time, you are still vulnerable for another potential attack. And that's why, hence the reason why 2 attacks in a matter of a month and a half or 2 months. So I think we may see a little bit more of that. I think the lockdown, I say lockdown, meaning the tools, the processes, the technology to be implemented are still at a slower pace until you get a breach. Once you get a breach, it accelerates. The budgets come in, money seems to flow automatically, funds get generated automatically. But until then, for some organization, it's tough. But yes, another point, which I agree wholeheartedly with Paul, the CISO is either reporting to the board or the CEO. And I think that makes the role a lot more impactful rather than it sitting behind.
And one could argue that the supply chain is actually of higher risk. Right? I could put in all of the protection in my data center. I could put all of the plans in place to be resilient. But if 15 of my suppliers get attacked, data gets segregated, they choose not to pay the ransom, then I'm impacted directly. Yeah. And if that happens, if 3 of them out of my 15, then the recovery would be measured in weeks and not months. Right? So I can plan for all the worst case scenarios in my own business, but I'm relying upon at some point in that supply chain, I'm either at the beginning, in the middle, at the end, that I might be affected.
But you're certainly there.
Yeah.
Well, and it goes back to when we first started this part of the conversation to the word you used, Paul, and that was the word resilience. How are you as an organization going to be resilient, not if, but when you're impacted? That's the challenge. And maybe that's that's our first real big prediction for 25. And that is people will start to use the word and behave in a resilient fashion with their organizations. They're going to have to.
Right. And does your resilience program include data protection? Includes cyber protection? It includes DR and BCP. It's all part of a bigger program now.
But I would even say, does it include you getting cyber insurance and all those processes in place for you to get actual cyber insurance in place? Because underwriting is getting tougher, premiums are getting higher, and hence, if you have had a breach, then for you to continue to get cyber insurance is also going to be tough as well. So, I agree with Paul with topics of supply chain. I think that's going to be more. I think the persistent threats for long-term attacks are also going to be more, meaning the outages will last more longer as well. So, perfect example was CDK, which was that, remember the global car dealerships that they had to go back to paper? I think that can happen to an organization or to a global use platform. That's going to impact significantly a lot more businesses across the world.
Now, do we think cyber bleeds into physical? Do we need to worry about the executives, the board, the people involved, not just the systems involved? And that becomes an umbrella issue, right? Is it a swatting concern that I need to deal with, or a violent concern that I need to deal with, right? That's
the news of the day would say yes, I would think.
Yeah, that's business disruption, right? So now the CISO has to think about those as events, not just somebody broke in, segregated my data, and not making it available to me until I pay the ransom. Yeah. That's an event. I get that.
Correct.
But there's a lot of bigger, human-based events I now have to.
It's a brave new world. Now, what I'm really wondering is how in 2024 we have gone 19 minutes into a conversation and haven't said the word artificial intelligence or the phrase artificial intelligence. Because it's the one topic. I've said time and time again, it is the one greatest catalyst for companies wanting to go about digital transformation and whatever that means for them in their organizations, because they want to take advantage of the capabilities that they perceive that AI would bring. So, Paul, let's have a conversation around AI, specifically around ROI. How you, in helping coach customers, help them focus on what is an appropriate ROI for investing in their AI initiatives?
I'm not familiar with the term AI, sorry.
AI, what is that? What is that? Automatic insurance?
Automatic insurance, yeah. I can talk
something
all about
like that. Because they're so free to give.
Free insurance for all. Socialism. Love socialism.
Welcome to Canada.
ROI was not important in the first 18 months of artificial intelligence, generative AI specifically. There was a lot of know before you try and a lot of try before you do. And that know and try effectively was just experimentation, right? I assigned the wrong team to do investigative reporting on artificial intelligence. I then tried a bunch of things, failed several times because I tried to use technology that either wasn't ready or was changing quickly or never went into production. ROI now, in the last 6 months, has shifted dramatically from learn, try to do, and by do I mean put it in production. Right? Don't do 7 interesting POCs that try 7 different architectures, 7 different technology usages, and therefore 7 different risk profiles, right? But pick one that is discrete, pick one that's obviously able to put in production, one that has close to near real-time return of investment, like measured in hours, days, and weeks, and make sure I get a win before I'm willing to invest in my next adventure. This is what I see often, and you guys can comment on this. What I see often is a whole bunch of interesting ideas from the enterprise and from the providers. The providers want something grandiose, right? They want something bigger, bad, newsworthy, press-worthy, right? Very few of those have positive ROI, mostly because it requires nth degree of integration, nth degree of skill set, agentic AI, reason-based workflows, like just complex stuff. Versus what an enterprise can do is slightly more than analytics, right? Slightly more than machine learning. An application of machine learning in an orchestrated way or workflow way versus a reasoned way. And that's where enterprises really need to start, to say, let's take your machine learning exercises, your models that you've created to do basket assessments, right? Product and pricing. And let's say, what can we do with implementations you already have to move to the next level? Yeah. That's kind of what I see. And because I already have the ROI on something like an ML implementation, it's not a huge jump to find the ROI on sort of an AI implementation, a generative one, using that kind of case study.
Yeah. Ernest, what do you think?
So maybe let me ask a question to Paul. So are you seeing ROI mainly based on quantitative or qualitative outcomes? And what I mean by that is, like, when you say quantitative, the simplest way of, I invested this much money, now I'm going to grow this much revenue, so I got my 50% return, right? But are we focusing more on qualitative as well? Because I have a view, are CIOs and CTOs focusing on qualitative analysis as well as part of the ROI?
It's never been our best suit. CIOs and CTOs have rarely measured themselves on qualitative functions, mostly because, as we all know, our careers have been on the innovation side, but also the CFO of IT. Right. And as the CFO of IT, we've had an expense budget to which we manage. So therefore, it's less about creating an innovation, getting an IRR, and more about, I've budgeted $100,000, so shalt implement something for $100,000, right? So it was an expense line that I've had to attribute an outcome to versus a business outcome to which I had to measure after the fact. In fact, we all know that very few IT projects have a measurable business outcome that actually is measured after the fact. The vast majority of IT projects are implemented, celebrated, and moved on.
And you move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say our entire 30-year career, we've never measured it, but let's start measuring this, I guess. Not likely,
maybe.
Right?
Well, what may impact that as well is the fact that the role of the CIO is evolving to be less of, I'm just the governor of, I'm the boss of IT, to, I now am impacting the workforce in a more substantial way. And they have input that is valid in their day-to-day as well. So maybe qualitative starts to fit into that a little bit.
And the demands are different, right? And I'm sure, Ernest, you've seen this in all of our sort of customer interactions. The AI, so cloud wasn't demanded by the chairman of the board.
Yeah.
Right? Quantum computing is not demanded by the administrative staff, but AI definitely is.
Yeah.
Right? AI goes top to bottom. There's an expectation that not only does the organization have a press release, but they want to rebrand the company as AI-centric. And since the administrative staff's using ChatGPT at home, they want to apply all of that awesome amazingness into the internal use of their productivity tools, which is why an easy out-of-the-box solution is the Copilots and Geminis, right? In Workspace and Office 365, because at least they get to start to appreciate the distinct difference between tag-based searching and prompt searching, right?
Summarize this email thread. Tell me about my day. These sorts of things.
So I would say then the employee engagement is one that could be impacted right away. The efficiency that the employee gains in their normal day work, rather than sitting there and crafting an email, they can go to Gemini, they can go to Copilot and say, please summarize this email, help me write a blog, whatever it may be. But more measurable ones could be simple as, how does it help me launch a new product faster? And maybe that changes the business model for the business, i.e. driving that new revenue. Hence, that's more quantitative, I guess, from that perspective onward.
Right. And you can see from the investment of big hyperscalers, right, big AI providers, that where out of the gate they invested in productivity tools, right, collaboration tools. And they were doing releases with cool new functions, but that has slowed down, if not stopped, right? The vast majority of innovation, where they're spending their money now, is in the actual transformer models themselves, right? There's a new version of a model every time. In fact, there's this space race of the models itself and the actual development tools, right? The Vertex of the worlds. That's where all of the engineering is going, not in another feature of PowerPoint.
Correct.
It's a really good point. Yeah, because I'll find Anthropic wins this week, Gemini won last week, ChatGPT won the week before, and it all changes. Who knows who's going to win next week?
Right. And they're close-ish. Like of the real world business use cases we've done, we've tried multiple models, and yes, the outcomes were measured in 0.5% difference in probability, but they weren't tens of percentage
Right.
difference in probabilities, right? So they're all close enough for the discrete business case we're actually trying to implement.
And if we're using the tools correctly, we're taking that as a starting block to then apply whatever our own special sauce that we each bring to the day, whatever this email is I'm drafting, whatever this article is that I'm creating. It's the starting block. It's not the end product.
Yeah, it needs context, and you need to ground it with your own knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Ground it with your customers, or just ground it with your drive, right? Ground it with your email. So you actually get context where I am. And that's what makes the model better. I'm less sure another model makes that outcome better.
Totally agree. All right. So in 2025, how can companies be successful with IT? There's a lot of words not defined in that phrase, but I'll just leave it to you to define whatever that means. Ernest, let's go over to you.
I'm glad you started with Ernest.
Yeah, I know who signs the paycheck. So how, in your I'm going to stall for you for a second, Ernest. In your vast wisdom, in your experience, and from crafting a brand new application from scratch to, hey, we're going to launch us a little bit of collaboration tools with AI. How can companies be successful with it?
See, I think it goes down to is, are you going to be an organization, and what kind of Paul alluded to, which is that, am I going to be the CIO that's going to roll up the sleeves? I want to try every LLM and I'm going to try to customize it and build it. Or are you going to start to embed AI functions into the products and help accelerate that AI journey, improve that employee experience, improve that customer experience? I think those are going to be things from something to kind of think through and talk through. But I would say 2025, what makes AI more successful? You know what? I'm going to say the CIOs, or I'm going to say the CEO's dream of being AI driven, but it's the IT's horror of making sure that data, which is the lifeblood of AI, is truly realistic. And I think that's going to be the critical junction point for a CIO to be successful in any organization from that perspective onward. Data is going to be the key, the velocity, the veracity, the number of sources, the integration points, the interoperability. I think the whole data strategy will require a significant amount of work. But yet at the same time, there's going to be applications that are going to require possibly a significant amount of refactoring before they can start to leverage all these features and functionalities of different platforms.
It's good.
It's like asking the question, what do you think of why? It's like, okay, well, it's a broad question. Now, do you want the context of AI or the context of IT? I think they're different answers.
So the context of, well, the question really is, how can companies be more successful through the use of AI in 2025? So take that for whatever success means.
So I started on this AI journey being pretty bearish on the value of, is bearish good or bearish bad?
Bear's good.
Bearish good.
Yeah.
On the value of AI.
Bull bad, bear good, I think.
I believe, and even if it wasn't, you'll know what I mean. I believe that it was going to create a tremendous amount of value to humanity as a whole, and of course to corporations, to sort of the corporate life as a world. However, I thought there was going to be tremendous risk. 18 months later, 2 years later, I would say I am even more bearish on the possibilities, but I'm way more bullish on the risks. I think change in this world has made it higher risk, more difficult to learn. I have the wrong skill sets, or at least not enough skill sets to deliver on it, and therefore I'm much more likely to make mistakes. So if I zoom out a bit and look at the strategy for any one particular organization, I'm going to say, I think you have to invest time in education. I need you to know what some of these words mean, because it's not what you think they mean philosophically. I need the chairman of the board to appreciate that some value is good value, some value is press-worthy, and some of them are not. I need the administrative staff to appreciate the difference between tag-based searching and prompt-based responses, right? So that education needs to exist, and therefore I need to think about a training plan to support that. And then on the let's do some things page, that breaks down into build some stuff and use some stuff. On the build some stuff, I can't just have interesting ideas and then go ahead and do it. I need a priority setting, right? I need to say there's 400 ideas and 5 that matter. I need to make those tools available. I need to build demonstrations of those tools so that the developers know how to use them. It needs to be an engineering project, not an analytics project. So build needs to be figured out because people are just rolling up their sleeves, or individual contributors rolling their sleeves and doing something, and that something probably is not ready for prime time, right? And then finally on the use side, I guarantee that there's a whole bunch of software to which IT shops currently consume that has a whole bunch of embedded features. And those embedded features are close to near free. And it might be wise to use some of those features because it already has access to your security groups. It already has access to your core data. It's closer to the user who wants to use these tool sets, like in your CRM and your MES and your core banking system. It'll probably have a much better ROI in terms of its actual applicability to the business, right? So zoom out, look at philosophically those three branches and say, this is my strategy going forward. Surround that with how much I'm willing to spend.
Yeah.
It can't be open-ended, right? I'm willing to spend $1 million, not I'm willing to spend unlimited money, because there is no such thing as unlimited.
You have never worked in the government, apparently.
Cost is going to be a factor. There's no doubt about it.
For sure, but that's why I like your approach of going with the embedded features. Think Gemini, think Copilot. Yeah, there's a per license fee to be dealt with, but those tools, while they're not launching rocket ships or catching them out of the sky, what they are doing is they're teaching people, to your point, the difference in types of search. They're in relying on the enhanced tool set to use the things they're used to using, Outlook, Google Mail, whatever the things might be, in ways that are going to make their lives better from a quality perspective, quantitative standpoint, but also quantitative. They're going to be able to get more done on a day-to-day basis. And what that does is it allows them to get comfortable with this new employee that works in their organization called AI. As we all know, through going through IT projects, the biggest risk is the rejection from the user community in the change of what happens. And this is such a I think comfortable way to get people to use the tools that they know in a new way and be able to be more successful.
It's building their toolkit.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give the simple example. I started here with you, Paul, as you know, in September, and Pythian's been here for 27, 28 years. There are drives full of customer success stories that I haven't memorized yet, but we're a big Google shop here. We love us some Google. I dump them all into Notebook LM, and now I can ask any question about what our customers have done, even live while I'm on the phone with a customer. I would never admit to that live. Oh, wait, I just did. And be able to answer that with some degree of expertise. And it's the content that we created. The content that I put into there is all the stuff that's been approved to be used externally. So I know I'm not going to speak out of turn. And it's just using the tool set that's been made available to me.
The good news is nobody will remember, right? So it's just one meeting.
Remember what? All right. We have a little bit of time left. Let's talk a little bit more 2025. AI is going to bloom and blossom into ways that we haven't even imagined yet. There will be new technologies that will show up. Companies are going to, some folks are going to be really excited about things that we haven't envisioned yet, but they will show up. Let's talk about IT leaders balancing innovation in new and crazy ways and advancing what they already have in measured ways to drive the business forward. What are some strategies, starting with you, Ernest, on how IT leaders can do that?
Why don't we start with Paul on that one?
So here's the reality, right? The reality is AI is one of the 5 pillars for a CIO. It's not 4 of the 5 pillars.
Yeah.
So there are other things that CIOs need to do, right? So
sure.
The other main thing a CIO needs to do is worry about their people, right? Their organization. Some of it is succession, right? To say, I've done a whole bunch of work in the last couple of years to which my next in line have not done, right? They haven't worked with the CEO. They haven't presented to the board. They haven't created knowledge awareness outside of IT, and therefore they're going to have to come up to speed. They're going to have to participate with me as the CIO to be ready to be the CIO, right? So there's some of that. So there's a people column. There is a pillar that's cloud, and by that I don't mean move things to cloud. However, I might. What I actually mean is automation, right? To say, how do I make my non-cloud world look like a cloud world, right? How do I create a different consumption pattern, a different sense of agility, a different sense of scale throughout my diversified deployment, right? That's pillar 3. Pillar 4 of course, security, we talked about it this time, right? Is I have to be more resilient, and therefore I have to spend money on resilience, not just money on protection. And then finally, the big one, the big beast, the big issue that will be there forever in all of IT is currency. There are some shops that have 70% of their infrastructure and software not supported by the original vendor. That's expensive, right? And while I can make some of that red stuff green, the reality is some of that green stuff goes to yellow and some of that yellow stuff goes to red every single year. It's not a do it once and I'm all green. It's do it every year and invest in that journey. Some of it is big stuff, like move my mainframe application to something else, or it might be small stuff like refresh my storage, right? Those are reoccurring expensive projects, part of the pillars that I have to still think about as a CIO. It's not all AI.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Anything you'd add to that, Ernest?
Yeah, I looked at, just to kind of build on Paul's point, I looked at very similar thought process. So I've categorized them into the past as, application modernization, employee or internal employee engagement modernization, infrastructure modernization, security. So kind of what Paul spoke about, which is the 4 buckets. But as part of the whole application or security or infrastructure, you're looking at all aspects of technology. So in the infrastructure space, if I'm in the data center and I need to migrate to the cloud, hence it falls into that particular bucket. From an application perspective, I always put it as 2 parts. It's an internal and external facing application, and then kind of build a roadmap accordingly of, do I need to repaint that application, i.e. touch up? I'm okay. It's it's okay where it is, and I just need to upgrade the Oracle database. Or is it that I need to refactor it, and i.e. overhaul that particular application and needs to be a cloud native application, and I will rebuild that entire application stack from that perspective onward. So each area, based on the improvements you want to make, will have a certain project and a timeline. That's it.
I like it. All right, last question. So a lot of companies over the past several years have made comments that, when going to hire folks, they're looking less for a 4-year degree, an advanced degree. They're looking more for experience, and they're looking for capabilities and aptitude. And as that's progressed, what I found is it is absolutely, and technology has progressed, that it is incumbent on individuals to continue to upskill themselves. So let's talk strategies for a second about how individuals, from individual contributors on up, can continue to advance their own capabilities as they advance their education to be, 1, remain relevant, 2, really thrive in their given field.
Feels like an Ernest question.
It does feel like an Ernest question.
We're going to pass the bucket.
Hey, it worked for you last time, friend.
So I would say, I think it has to be complementary and it has to be a balanced approach. I don't think either one of the 2 applies. That's just my personal opinion. I do think that if you were to go to the educational route and you were to go and get an MBA, it does teach you certain aspects of the business. Sure. Teaches you finance and negotiation, M&A activity, et cetera, et cetera. And those things are not going to go away. They are going to continue to stay. Specifically now that we see how it's making an organization push boundaries. How do we want to change our market landscape? Do we want to acquire another organization? So I think those things still play a factor in my mind. I think the individual continuous learning journey really has to be defined by an individual's personality. And what I mean by that is, if you want to grow within the organization or you want to grow within the industry itself, it's not just good enough to say, hey, I had my hands on keyboard and I know I'm the biggest and the baddest DB expert or a cloud migration. I think it's also understanding that it may not be the only one cloud hyperscaler that you're going to work on. You're going to work on multiples. So I do think that having that vast knowledge, whether it is talking to industry peers, learning from industry experts, getting hands-on learning obviously definitely helps as well. But I think it needs a balanced view in all aspects of it as well. So I do think that for an individual to be fully successful in the world of IT, they're going to need a balanced view.
Yeah, and my question was not, should they go to school or should they self-learn? My question is, regardless of how they got where they are, how do they go forward?
And I think the point that I was raising is to go forward.
Yeah, it's individual.
It's individual. It's individually as how you may want to go. Jeff may be a learner from podcasts. Ernest may be a learner for reading books, for example. So it's an individual growth, but I do think that it is a growth where you learn from your peers as well.
Yeah,
and have the ability to give back.
And I'll change the question slightly for Paul, because in this organization, it's very much a remote organization. How do you encourage folks in your organization as CTO here to continue their learning paths, to be better at who they are, so that one, they are better as individuals at what they do, but two, they become better employees?
I always recommend a massive consumption of technology-based Netflix consumption. So it's movies, right? I want you to consume all you can. But aside from that, expertise is valueless without experience. So yes, read up. Yes, get certified. Yes, do online education, read all the blogs, do all those things for a single subject, and then participate in multiple projects using that subject. Don't be certified in multiple clouds and multiple AI technology sets and quantum computing and DNA storage and then do nothing with that. That's valueless. Valuable comes from learning one thing really well and applying it 50 times. So it's not about constant learning. It's about constant application.
Love that. Love that. All right, last question. Hardest one probably of our time here today, and that is in 2025. What TV show or movie are you most looking forward to?
I don't know.
Landman for me. Landman. I was addicted to Yellowstone in the last month that I watched it soup to nuts in a couple weeks. And then Landman started, which was effectively Yellowstone but in the oil fields, right? I actually find it better than Yellowstone, same producer, because Billy Bob Thornton is just hilarious.
He is hilarious.
And it's like in maybe the 5th episode right now. I got to think it's going to move into the new year, and it's going to be amazing. I'm addicted. I'm in it. I'm in the story.
You're in all the way. Ernest, you got one? Something you're looking forward to?
You know, I would say I'm not there yet, but if somebody had to restart a series, I'm going to say Suits.
Suits.
If they could start another season of Suits, because
You would watch it if they showed it.
I would so watch that. Though I would just say recently, 2 weekends ago, I started watching Ballers.
Ballers.
I've not seen it.
Yeah, that was
Rock.
that's interesting. The Rock.
Yeah.
The Rock
good.
at Miami scene. Interesting perspective.
For me, it's Severance. Did you guys watch the first season of Severance?
Big fan. Looking forward to the second season of Severance.
Yeah. That one got delayed in COVID, and I think it shows up is it January?
January, yep.
Yeah. All right. So, Paul, I'm allowed to travel when that show's back up, so I can sit around and watch Severance all night.
Fortunately, you can consume that from any city you happen to be in.
And at any time. Yes. Welcome to America. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. 47 minutes well spent. And I appreciate your insights, your experience, and of course, your time here today. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.